What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of TheLead Houston, where it's all Houston all the time. Today, you see them right here, ladies and gentlemen. You've probably seen them on your television screens or reporting somewhere for college football, or maybe you remember him at his alma mater as a former quarterback. Jordan Reid is with us, ladies and gentlemen. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the Houston sports folk.
Yeah, well, my name is Jordan Reid. You can find me on Twitter, X, whatever you call it, at Jordan_Reid. That's Reid. You can find my work alongside my colleagues, Phil Yates, Mel Kiper Jr., as well as Matt Miller on ESPN.com or ESPN Plus as well.
Now, Jordan, I was doing some background information on you, and I was like, I was just snooping in on you, stalking you a little bit, and in a healthy way, of course. And former quarterback, you were looking into coaching. It looked like you got into some coaching ranks. What made you change from coaching into the PR kind of communications aspect of things?
Well, I had a family back in 2018. Me and my wife had twin daughters at the time. And as everybody knows, college coaching can be very tedious.
True.
So I wanted to figure out a way how I could really combine my love for creating content and then also combine my love for the NFL draft space as well. So took a chance as a YouTuber for a year, freelance, did basically voiceover scouting reports for prospects. So basically, just talking over clips, and I would explain like why this was a positive, why this was a negative, and just posting it on social media. On back then, Facebook was very popular. Then also Twitter was at its peak as well, and then some other blogger sites as well. And then at the time, there was a company called the Draft Network that was a startup, and they were looking for somebody with coaching background, scouting background, then also playing background as well. So worked there for 2 years, did a lot of great things with them, and was very thankful for my time there. And ESPN came out of nowhere. They noticed my work while I was there and got an opportunity with ESPN. So you never know who's watching, man. Whether it's on YouTube, writing, written content, any type of content, you never know who's paying attention to you.
Yeah, Jordan, I appreciate you speaking about that. I know not only do you speak to myself, but there are a lot of other content creators around that will see this video. And, you know, everyone's always watching you some way, somehow. People don't think they are, but people are watching you. So I do appreciate the comments there. I know you also have a little Houston sports bias. Now, I know my audience will definitely be fond of your bias towards Houston sports. And, obviously not all the fully way, but go ahead, talk to yourself, to the audience, sway some people over, sway some new fans your way.
Yeah, well, we were talking pre-show a little bit. I'm a big NBA fan, so I was a basketball kid actually growing up before I ever even got into football. So NBA is something that I watch really closely. I'm a big league pass guy, so I get a chance to really see everybody play throughout the
Mhm.
league, and I dabble a little bit into the NBA draft. Of course, I'm not sitting here watching film and scouting reports on those guys, but I love to know about the next wave of players that's coming in. And one that I love is Amen Thompson. I'm a
Mm.
big fan of him. He just plays so hard, man. He's so athletic, great defender. Still needs to. His jumper has a ways to go as far as from deep, but I think that's something that he definitely can develop. But I love the work ethic and just the intensity and the effort that he puts into every single game. So I like watching this young Rockets core as well. The West is really tough, like we were saying before the show, but I'm really looking to see like where this core could go, especially 2 to 3 years from now. I think they got a chance to be pretty dang good.
First 50-win season in quite some time. Finally clinched the playoffs, first time in 5 years. Exciting times to be a Rockets fan. It's also exciting times to be a Houston Texans fan, and that's what the majority of this video will be. The Houston Texans had a lot of hype entering to the 2024 season, and it just didn't necessarily match up to the hype where they ended up finishing the same place as they finished many years prior, even before D'Amico Ryans, the divisional round. What were your initial thoughts on the Texans' 2024 NFL season?
Well, defensively, they were really fun to watch. Especially, it was good to see Derek Stingley get back healthy and for him to finally get his contract that he definitely did deserve. But the edge rush group of Daniil Hunter and then also Will Anderson, man, like it's fun just seeing both of those dudes come off of the edge. One of the better defensive end duos in the NFL as well. So defensively, I think they have a lot of great pieces. Offensively, Nico Collins, I think, is one of the more underrated, not only receivers, but also players in the entire NFL. And then, CJ Stroud is always going to be fun to watch, but they have to figure out a way to protect him just because last year wasn't as good as what we saw during his rookie year, but there still were some high moments for him. But I think the one area where they could look to improve, especially right away, even despite some of the free agent signings and trades that they have made, I still think they have a ways to go along the offensive line in order to improve and protect CJ Stroud.
So the O-line is definitely one of the areas of improvement. What also are the biggest needs for this Houston Texans team heading into the draft?
I would say interior defensive line. I would like to see them get a disruptive pass rusher and then also a stout run presence in the middle as well. So defensive tackle is definitely one area where I think they could serve to improve, but also wide receiver. I definitely think they need to add another receiver to the room, especially with Stephon Diggs now gone to New England, and then Tank Dell likely to miss all of next season. So I definitely think a wide receiver, just finding somebody to complement Nico Collins, that definitely could be in the cards.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans will agree with you there. The O line is definitely a priority for a lot of Texans fans. Wide receiver has been a popular name just because premium positions is always fun to talk about when it comes to fandom, and it's always a good thing. I was looking through a bunch of your mock drafts for the Houston Texans, and we're gonna reflect back onto it. We're gonna play a little something here. Let's go all the way back May 2nd, 2024. You had a way too early first round predictions. The Houston Texans, you had them selecting. This was ESPN Plus exclusive content. You had them taking Harold Perkins Jr., linebacker out of LSU. Obviously, he did not come out. He ended up going back to LSU, not committing to the NFL draft. What were your thoughts on a linebacker there for the Houston Texans way back then?
I just wanted to figure out a way to add a defensive piece just because back then they needed some guys that consistently get after the quarterback. And I thought Perkins, even though which position he's going to play, that's still up in the air. I don't even think LSU knows where they want to play him at consistently, just because he's a bit undersized and, he doesn't have the instincts consistently to play middle linebacker. And he's just too small to be a defensive end at about 6 foot, 220 pounds. So, it's going to be interesting to see where they do end up playing him with this being his last year and then him coming off of the knee injury as well. I'm looking forward to seeing how he performs, but just giving D'Amico Ryans and that defense another defensive piece to wreak havoc. That was my thinking behind that.
Moving on to October, you had the Houston Texans, October 16, 2025, mock draft prediction. First round picks. This was 6 weeks into the NFL season. You had the Houston Texans taking defensive tackle Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss, somebody that is still on the minds of Houston Texans fans currently. Thoughts on a defensive tackle and Walter Nolan in his fit year in Houston?
I mean, it would be great. I'm super high on him. I'm actually higher than consensus on him. He's my number 11 ranked player overall. So that just goes to show you just how highly I think of him from an on the field standpoint and what he can be. He reminds me a lot of Ed Oliver when he was coming out of Houston, a little bit bigger than what Ed was coming out.
Who's else?
And you guys are very familiar with what he was able to accomplish during his time in college. So I think Nolan is a very similar player that could just be that disruptive wrecking ball in the middle, which is something Houston doesn't have consistently right now.
Now we're going to go to January 7th, 2025. You had a 2025 NFL mock draft here, and you actually had the Houston Texans taking a tackle guard out of Arizona, Jonah Savanea. I might have mispronounced his last name. I apologize, big fella. But the Texans were 10-7 at this point, and you got them taking a tackle and or guard out of Arizona. You also got them taking them again here in April as well. You seem to be a little high on Jonah there from Arizona. What are your thoughts on him with the Houston Texans?
Yeah, well, I mean, just trying to add offensive line reinforcements to the Texans. That really was my thinking behind that. But as far as guard, they still have a hole there, in my opinion. Savania is that guy that can give you the flexibility to play guard or tackle. He's played both during his time at Arizona. And then just that positional versatility is always going to help have more feathers in his cap, especially in the draft room as well. Now, I don't see him as a late first round pick anymore. I definitely think he's a day two guy, probably somewhere in the middle of the second round is where he could go. So if they do want to get him on day two, that definitely could be a possibility Houston, but I just think there's other routes that they could go along the offensive line. And I think I had a different name in my latest mock draft for them at 25.
Yeah, well, I had on March 4th, you had Kelvin Banks Jr.
Yeah.
to the Houston Texans right there. This was a round 1 to 2 mock draft where you had Kelvin Banks going to us, and this was before the Laramie Tunsil trade. You had quoted on there that he could be the successor to Laramie Tunsil. Now, he could possibly be a day one starter. Cam Robinson isn't a world beater. Titus Howard and Blake Fisher, who we got a lot of hope for, but ultimately Kelvin Banks is going to get some snaps at starter in terms of training camp and stuff. He's going to have a competition there for that left tackle position, and hell, maybe even right tackle wherever the Texans play him. Or we also got the guard option as well too. Where do you think Kelvin Banks fits on the offensive line in for the Houston Texans?
Well, I think he can play left or right tackle. And I know he's only played left tackle during his time with the Longhorns, but I think he's a plug and play guy at tackle, whether it's on the left or the right side. I definitely think that's up for debate, but I'm always big on keeping linemen where they're most comfortable and where they have been the most productive during their college seasons as well. So he's only played left tackle. Let's just stick him at left tackle, and that 1 year deal for Cam Robinson should not deter them away from taking the offensive tackle very early on at all. So if Kelvin Banks is somebody that's available to you on the board, I definitely think you turn in the card very quickly, just because we have to figure out a way to protect CJ Stroud. That should be their priority going into this year's draft. And I know, once again, they've added some veterans, but none of those guys should keep me away from adding an offensive lineman at 25.
Absolutely. And D'Amico Ryans talked about the offensive lineman, and he mentioned for offensive line, and this was back in March. D'Amico Ryans quote talked about all linemen with grit, toughness, finishing, nastiness, leaders, and passionate about football. Those were the key takeaways for me in that little 20-second clip he had talking about offensive linemen. Who specifically from those adjectives and those stigmas do you think currently fits what D'Amico Ryans could be looking for?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys that could exemplify that. We've already talked about one, Kelvin Banks. Will Campbell is another. He's probably not going to be available to them on the board unless something catastrophic happens. Tyler Booker out of Alabama is one that definitely screams a lot of those prerequisites that he talked about. Savaneo, we already talked about. If you're looking for somebody in the second or the third round as a guard, Tate Ratledge out of Georgia is definitely one that is very reminiscent of a lot of those, but also Emory Jones out of LSU is another that I think is just a nasty finisher that also is a mauler as well in the run game.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, Jordan. We've got just a quick out for you, real quick. Tyler Booker was somebody a lot of Texans fans were high on initially, but it seems like there is some growing concern that maybe his film kind of the play on his film decreases since his freshman year. Maybe you can enlighten some Texans fans around Tyler Booker there.
Well, the film is really good. I'm not sure what they're looking at with that. I think it was the testing that really threw a lot of people off, just because he was not a very good athlete from an athletic testing standpoint. So as far as the scheme fit, is going to be very scheme specific. So if you play a lot of man gap power scheme of where you just get a lot of body on a body, as far as what you're asking the lineman to do, that's really in his wheelhouse, just because he loves to win in those short areas. He's what I like to call a bully in the phone booth. He likes to turn those matchups into a street fight in a sense, just because that's his area of expertise. He wants to win in short areas with his hand power. He has really good feet as well. But when you ask him to move outside of that phone booth or outside of those short areas, that's where a lot of his deficiencies really come, or they really rear their head. So with Booker, if you're asking him to win in those short areas, I definitely think he's going to be somebody that could be a starter right away. But once you stretch those limitations, that's where you see a lot of his weaknesses coming to the forefront.
Nice. Any names or favorites you got for the Texans at 25?
Well, Booker, I definitely think would be a good one. Banks would be a great one as well. Those will be the top two, in my opinion. But one name I definitely think should be on Texans' radar that I think is going to go much earlier than what's projected in mock drafts right now is Josh Connerly Jr. out of Oregon. there's a lot of love for him inside of the league in the scouting community. So Josh Connerly Jr. is somebody that has experience on the right as well as the left side at tackle. And, he still needs to gain some strength. He still needs to fill out his body as well. But there's a lot of untapped potential with him.
Now, before I let you go, Jordan, I can't let you go without giving your March Madness predictions, man. We know the Houston Cougars, whose house, are still dancing. They're playing Duke, one of the best teams, if not the best team in college basketball. You're a basketball fan. I know you're watching. Who you got? UH versus Duke, man. Who do you got?
Man, I may need to mute myself after I say
Uh-oh.
this. I got Duke
Uh-oh.
winning it all, man. It's just they're so loaded, man. They play great defense as well. Houston does as well, but just the offensive production that they have, and then just how well put together their team is as well. They're playing really well together right now. They have three who I think are going to be end up being top 10 picks, and Cooper Flag is the obvious one. Akan Knipple is another who I think is worthy of top 10 pick, but the guy that makes the whole entire thing go is Cayman Malawach, the 7'2" center from Sudan. Like he reminds me a lot of Clint Capella. You guys have a lot of experience with him during his time in Houston during the earlier parts of his career, but I think he has an even better shooting touch than what Clint Capella had during his prime. So he's the one that really makes everything go. But I'm not discounting Houston just because they're a very well put together team as well, and they can score in bunches. Coach Sampson does a great job with that team as well. So I think it's going to be a great high scoring game, in my honest opinion. But I just got Duke winning it all just because I'm big on momentum, especially rolling into a game. But I think it's going to be a really tight game.
Well, Jordan, I do appreciate you coming on, man. If you have any exiting thoughts or anything you want to promote, now would be the time.
Yeah, so I have my 7-round mock draft coming out on April 21st. Every single pick, predicting every single one in each round. So that'll be on ESPN Plus in April 21st. So Houston fans, be on the lookout for that. I'll be predicting all of your picks. And trust me, there will be a lot of offensive linemen early on for the Texans because they need them.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Jordan, for coming on. As always, everybody, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Do y'all staying? It's free 99. Check out Jordan on ESPN Plus, man. If you don't got an account, go ahead and get one, man. Go ahead, check out all his work. He does a fantastic job, him and the rest of the ESPN guys. As always, guys, go Astros, go Rockets, go Texans. You have a blessed day.